Hello everybody, welcome back to Farming Simulator 15, Gelvin Valley map. Wonderful map created by Wild Wild Wes. We're obviously on a hiatus from harvest. This is the first major rain that I think we've had since starting to play this map. I know I started it before I began recording episodes. I don't remember if we had a major rain in the past or not. Doesn't seem to happen very often, and woo, stay out of the ditch in Farm Sim 15. Oh boy, I tell you what, when Horseplay goes cattywampus, it takes a little while to get back on track. We're trying to sell a little bit of grain, one for something to do in the rain. I suppose if I run out of grain to sell, we'll need to fast forward so we get back to harvesting. Woo! Almost hit that post. Let me see what prices are doing. Okay, both are headed down. I wonder if it has something to do with the fact that we're selling. How much do we have? 45,000. Yeah, so it'll be a few more trailer loads. On the plus side, I am positive in my cash position, so that's a good thing. On the negative side, every moment that it rains and I can't be harvesting, I leased the header to my combine, and I forget how much it charged to lease it for 2 days. But I need to finish the harvest, I think, if I can, within the lease, or it's just going to start accruing additional fees. But what of it? It'll be what it'll be. Now, as I started finishing the last episode, I got onto a subject of game library. I mentioned this cabinet that's in my office. It holds, I pretty well have kept, I think, most of the old games that I have. And I'll be curious if anybody cares to comment if they have the same game, if they've ever heard of it before, or if it sounds like something they might be interested in checking out. I mean, just for for whatever purpose. Probably can't even find some of these anymore. And maybe to comment, what's the most unique game you've ever played, or something that's been significant to you in the past, with this hobby that we all have of playing a few lousy computer games. I say lousy. We do it for some reason that's a benefit to us. I think I mentioned last time I had a flight simulator game. That just really isn't my thing. Must have been included in another, I kind of think it was included with some other purchase I had and just thrown in as an extra. Never really played it. I don't even remember installing it. I got another one in my hands here. It's called Railroad Pioneer. I think I mentioned in the last episode, I mean, I'm really fond of agriculture. That's probably my primary interest. But I gotta say, I was pretty interested in trains too. I've always enjoyed being around railroads. For a little while in my life, I was part of a model railroad club. And frankly, if it wasn't so expensive to put together a model railroad, I'd probably have one, or still be part of that club. It's just kind of, it's way easier to buy a computer game with train stuff in it for $50 than it is to spend that same $50 on what, a few track sections. They're just egregiously expensive. But I always have liked trains. Railroad Pioneer, I'm not really sure just what the premise of the game was. I do know that I got it roughly about the same time that we got Farm Sim 09, which was the first version of Farm Sim that we had kind of as a family. So, I'm just kind of looking it over here. You start in New York in 1830. I really don't know much about that. Looks like you put up trains and haul stuff here and there. So what can I say? Just don't know much about it. And other train games that I have, will come across. Eventually, I spent a lot more time on. One of them I'll just mention briefly here because I don't think. Well, maybe I do. I don't know that I still have the box. I got a game back in, let's see, was this high school? Or I say I got it. I almost think it was my father that got it, maybe for the kids in the family, or maybe we told him about it. I know what it was. And they still do this sometimes. The demo game of one called Transport Tycoon. This would have been, oh, back in the early 90s. My brother and I found on the internet, we were just looking up games to play or things we might be interested in, and so we saw this one called Transport Tycoon, and so we downloaded it, and it was just amazing. Had kind of this isometric style presentation in there. The graphics were really, really good compared to, what we had at the time. And by now, I mean, this is in my 91st episode here. I know if to get to here, you've had to see an episode of like Sim Farm, which is, top-down graphics. That's really just, you look at it and it just smells ancient. It's so old. And so that's kind of what you were used to. And then you see a game like Railroad Tycoon come along, and it's in 3D environment, and for that genre of a game, I won't say it was ahead of its time, but it looked really slick. And so we downloaded this demo for it, and we're really impressed by it. I mean, I think it lets you build trains or something in there, and had a track set up, and so we begged mom and dad or whatever, I think, and we got it somehow, and just played the stuffing out of it. All of us did, my brothers and I. And later the app became Transport Tycoon Deluxe. The Chris Sawyer was the guy that made the game. He expanded it with Transport Tycoon Deluxe, and then he kind of disappeared. Well, he didn't really disappear. I think he started developing another style of game, which is pretty cool in its own right. And I have one of those also, and it's Roller Coaster Tycoon. This was kind of at the beginning of all these tycoon type games, that whole genre. And now they're a dime a dozen. I mean, you can think of anything, and you could turn it into tycoon. Zoo Tycoon, and yeah, and like I say, this was Roller Coaster Park Tycoon, and we played that one quite a bit. And I know my boys have enjoyed it also, and I think there were several iterations of it. Railroad Tycoon Deluxe, and then he had several what we would call today downloadable, or not downloadable content, that's DLCs, but just additional content. And in those days, I don't think you could download it off the internet. You had to buy a CD with it just to extend your enjoyment. And that was pretty cool, for the earlier style games, that he was putting together with roller coasters, to figure out all the physics to get those to work right, was pretty amazing. I know a lot of people complain about the physics in here in a farming sim, and I don't know. I'm not a programmer. I have a feeling it is extremely difficult to mimic real life flawlessly, the way God designed the world that we live in, and it's hard to reproduce in terms of programming. And probably if someone could do it perfectly, we should probably be very scared that someone could get that close to what it is in reality. So he kind of stepped away from Transport Tycoon for a while to develop Roller Coaster Tycoon, and then he came back after a number of years, and I think he developed what's called Locomotion, something like that, which I think in its literature he said was the, quote, spiritual successor, or however he put it, to Transport Tycoon. I really don't know the stats, but I have a feeling Locomotion didn't do as well in the market as Transport Tycoon Deluxe did. Oh, again, stay on the road. He's always whipping around. I didn't play it that much at all. I remember installing it, and it had you recognized Transport Tycoon Deluxe in it, but it added enough new bells and whistles that made the interface, the new bells and whistles were supposed to improve things, right? But it just seemed a little clunkier to deal with. At least that's how it felt to me. So eventually, I just uninstalled it and went back to Transport Tycoon Deluxe. And maybe that's kind of what I'm repeating here in history. This is Farm Sim 15. I have all the versions, but I'm kind of stuck here playing this one for some reason. So what can I say? It is what it is. That's kind of what I did in the past. But something interesting happened too in that particular game. Really, we talk about history. The whole gaming community has a history in its own right. Let alone war history, history of governments and all that. Just changing technology over time, the programming, the developers that come and go. It has its own history in its own right. But what happened to Transport Tycoon Deluxe is it was so stinking popular that once Chris Sawyer kind of disappeared. That's kind of my words for it. It's like he just fell off the earth. There was no interest in further developing the game, so it appeared. So eventually people started looking around and saying, well, what can we do with this here? Is there a way to mod this particular game? And that's probably the earliest, well, I won't say that was the earliest introduction I had to modding. I guess there were other games where you could mod. Anytime you could start to make adjustments to the save game file, tinker around with how the game behaved, you had that type of mod in there. But all of a sudden on the internet, which also was kind of coming up in its growth phase at that time, and more materials was available online, um, that that's something that's probably hard to fathom for young people. But there was a day when the internet, at least for us little people, just flat out didn't exist. I didn't even know what the internet was until I went to university, and that opened up kind of a whole new world. But getting through high school, there was no such thing. I think we started to see email, but no internet. The concept of a web browser and all that I didn't know until college. But anyway, on the internet, we started to see for Transport Tycoon Deluxe, and you know what? I think it's still out there to this day. Mods for it. Kind of mods. I mean, it wasn't like how we have on Farm Sim, where we just take a mod and we drop it in the mods folder and we run with it. It was more complicated in some ways. It's like you had to download this executable file and store it somewhere, and then double click on it, and then there'd be a series of instructions you had to follow to get it installed in the right place. And if you did everything right and the stars aligned, or however you say it, then you could see some different behavior in game. And sometimes you screwed things up massively and it wrecked your game, or didn't work. But you could start to see some other things. In Transport Tycoon, for example, I think you were limited on how long the trains could be, kind of in the game out of the box. I don't remember what it was exactly. Maybe you were limited to, say, 8 cars. Well, someone came along with a mod and said you can have 100 of them if you want. 100 cars. I mean, they figured out something to change the speed, to where you can make your locomotive go super, super fast, instead of putzing around. So just a number of things like that. Some of them kind of cosmetic and whatnot, or of marginal value, or not necessarily even realism, just kind of like, oh, cool, look at this, see what I can do. I was able to change the game or tweak it kind of in this one way. But it was pretty cool, to back then, when that's all you have, that looks pretty cool to you. Now, seeing the type of games we have, I mean, that maybe seems pretty elementary, what we did. But this continued, and pretty soon, each game will come with a graphics pack. I mean, in Transport Tycoon, they had a certain style of buildings that they would put up in the towns, where your little trains and buses and trucks and whatever would go around. And they started coming out with different graphical sets. You could make alterations as to how it looked in game if you wanted a different playing experience, and so forth and so on. And this continued until another game was developed called Open Transport Tycoon. And open means it was the literal program itself. Now, I don't think that the original developer, Chris Sawyer, whatever his name was, whoever backed him, I don't think they gave out their programming. I think someone loved the game so much that they sat down at a computer and they figured out whatever algorithms were in there and they punched it out until it worked. And then they sent it up, unless they hacked it. I suppose there are people out there that could have hacked the programming. I don't know. See, the thing of it is, I don't know that anybody was ever sued over it. If someone truly hacked it versus built it on their own, then I suppose the original maker couldn't just come out and sue them over it, if it's truly something they built on their own. So who knows what legal machinations may have happened during that time period that I'm totally unaware of. But it just fascinated me that the community basically came out with their own version of this really, really popular game. And then the community could adjust it however they wanted. And so all of these previous mods, the people have been working on, whether it was faster trains, longer trains, different graphics, additional sounds, different things in the economic engine or whatever people wanted, well, those in the community that had programming ability started taking their ideas and would build it into the game if they also were interested in it or felt that it fit. Now, I know there's some limitations to the game, the genre, the style that it is, being isometric in presentation, so you don't just take a game like that and turn it into having graphics, like Farm Sim. So I really don't know how it's stay on the road. I really don't know how it's progressed since, and it's been a long time since I've cracked it open. I'm pretty sure I still have Open Transport Tycoon Deluxe somewhere on my computer. But if I didn't, I'm reasonably confident all I gotta do is go to the internet and I could easily find it. For years and years, I mean, this is decades now, there's been a fan club at this game, a big club, where they just continue supporting it, and for all I know, they continue building on it too. So I wonder how many games that happens with, where it's so beloved, if you will, that the community of gamers themselves say, "Hey, we need to we need to take this out of the hands even of the developer because we want to preserve it and continue to add to it, develop it." Because a lot of these games, for whatever reason, the developers, when they make whatever money they want to make off it, they just cease developing, don't continue with it, and there's a lot of games that die. One would think that as much popularity as Transport Tycoon had, one would think that the original developer would have just continued. I mean, you look at the Farming Sim franchise, the Giants have made money hand over fist with this game, and every 2 or 3 years they come out with a new one, and all of us like sheep, we buy it up again, and they make their fortune all over again. And a lot of the time they aren't making huge changes between each version. And if anybody that's read some of the forums and what have you, you can read all the complaints of, hopes and dreams of people that were dashed to pieces by whatever they thought the Giants should have built in but didn't, and what have you. But the reality is they've made a ton of money doing this, and so it kind of begs a question. You wonder if a ball was dropped in the marketing department of whoever was responsible for Transport Tycoon, that it, just didn't continue. But I spent a lot of time on that game. I know, particularly in college, I think I did some in high school. Maybe it was right towards the end when that came out. But it just was a wonderful place to relax. You could learn a little about economics, watch trains go, build their networks. It was stimulating to the mind, and you didn't have to blow up anybody or shoot anybody to have a good time with it. So that's where I spent a lot of time. The next one I have in my hand here is Sid Meier's Civilization 3. And actually, yeah, this is kind of in the middle. Um, Probably everybody's heard of Civilization. I don't remember when that franchise started. Similar to maybe when Transport Tycoon started. Civilization 1, I remember as a friend I had from the Midwest who first showed me the game. And it was old enough. I think it predated even a Transport Tycoon, because this was in the days of DOS, where you couldn't just throw a CD in the drive and click a couple buttons and it would install for you. Oh, no, no, no. You had to march through a few paces in DOS to get it on there, and you had to horse around with your sound card and make sure it was linked and blah, blah, blah. But it was this game where you start at the beginning of time, as if you're the first man, woman, whatever, ever to be on the face of the earth. And so you're starting in the Stone Age. And then over time, you build cities, you gather resources, you build a civilization, you learn things, you bump around and see who your neighbors are, and you try to take them over, maybe steal their technology, trade with them, all kinds of things that you could do, and they're basically all the things that we all do every day. Um, Most of which is positive, except for stealing and war and and all that kind of stuff. But this game had it in there too, and it really was kind of a history lesson over time as to when various things were developed, and it had a technology tree built into it. Obviously, you couldn't just wake up one day if you were a caveman and say, I think I'll invent a nuclear bomb today. No, you had to work your way up to it, so I don't remember what some of the earliest things were, but you learned about development of the alphabet and languages and mathematics and so on and so forth, and all of these technologies built on one another, and as you had more new technologies in hand, you could use them, harness the power of them to do something positive in your particular civilization. Maybe it gave you advantages. For example, one of them maybe was, maybe this was a wonder of the world. That somewhere in there, you got the ability to build a granary. Maybe it was construction or something. There was a technology that you learned, so you can now build a granary to store grain. Previously, you couldn't store it. Well, now with the ability to store grain, your population could grow because you had extra food available, throughout the year for everybody, and that's just kind of built on itself. And if you took it clear to the end, I believe you could get all the way to space flight. And at the end, I think you were working with your government. You were spending resources to build components of your. Oh, we don't even have a full. Yeah, we're selling her all, kids. We're dumping our barley. Oh, dang it! I forgot. I gotta keep backing up just to get out to the correct dot. Let me see here. Okay, I can back up. That can be close enough to the pot. One more load will haul up the hill. And then our barley's gonna be unhauled. So that was a game of Civilization. That was Civ 1 that I did that on. And I spent a fair amount of time on it, just a good old DOS version. I think there's only really a couple times that I played it all the way through. Because it would take a while to get through. But it was, yeah, parts of it were humorous. Other parts of it, like I say, were historical in nature. You'd learn some history through it. You could learn economics, diplomacy. various things, but sometimes part of the amusing part is, in later versions of Civilization, I think, the next one after, of course, would have been Civilization 2, they started having actors perform the parts of the advisor to the gamer, if you will. And I say gamer because I don't want to call him president. I don't want to call the gamer king or dictator. You could choose what form of government you wanted to have through there, which is kind of an interesting feature. As if one person can just go into a country and say, all right, previously we were a republic, now we're going to be dictator. I think you'd have a lot of people saying, say what? No, we're not. So, but in this here, you had the opportunity to experience what different styles of government, how that would impact the economy, impact how your ability to work with other nations and negotiate and what have you. So I use Civ 1, I eventually got Civ 2, I spent a fair amount of time on it. Um, and they also started to build in stuff too about taking care of the environment, or else, and I think mainly it would come up in one way. Like if you engaged in nuclear war, one of the weapons you could develop was a nuclear warhead. And if you threw around too many nuclear bombs, they figured that it would heat things up, and eventually it would come to the point they would literally adjust the climate in the game so that it was more tropical in nature, and that could cause some trouble for the player. You would lose some of your resources that you had, and you could repair the environment, but it came at an enormous cost. Which I think they were trying to send a message that they're right or wrong. That's, I think, the message that they were trying to sell. So this one here in my hand is actually Civilization 3. I don't think I played it at all. It's likely I maybe installed it, but I think by then I was moving away from that particular genre. And so I know I have Civ 1, 2, 3, and I think they gave it a different name when it turned into Civilization 4. Was it called Alpha Centauri? I think that's what it was. Maybe someone will know and they'll correct me if I'm wrong. But like I say, at the end of the Civilization game, one of the options you had was to build a spaceship and then fly away. I guess the premise being is you you channeled your inner Star Trek and went out to boldly go where no man has gone before and see if you could discover new worlds, so on and so forth. That fantasy. Well, I think Alpha Centauri then carried forward Civilization, where it landed you on well, I think there's a star called Alpha Centauri, right? So it presumes there's a planet, maybe the air, that you could land on and start up a new world or civilization. You know what? I am now out of barley. Don't have a lick left, but I do have some canola, and the price is headed up. But I seem to recall, I wonder if 562 is very high. I just don't know. So I think I'm not gonna sell any more here. Maybe I'll cease selling. I'm trying to think, is there anything else down here I need to do? Or do I just get the tractor back up to, let's see, what's the field number, 42? To get ready to combine, and I may need to, yeah, combine storage. Is that the one I want? Let's see if I can see mine. Oh yeah, so let's see if we can get into the air and send him on up the pipe. Yeah, he's gonna go there, but will he? Yeah, okay, I think you'll find his way. With the new route, last time I said I was going to create it off camera, so that's what I went ahead and did. And as it turns out, we're getting to the end of a half hour here anyways. I hope I haven't bored anybody to tears, kind of just walking down my own memory lane of some of the games I've enjoyed. I got one more here in front of me, And this, there's many more to look through. I'll just mention in passing, because this one here I spent basically zero time at all. It's a tank game. I already said a little bit earlier, I'm not really a fan of the shoot 'em up games. I think this here you drive a tank or something. Not really sure what all it involves. Blitzkrieg 2, have no idea what it is. I'm pretty sure I installed it once upon a time, but I don't even remember what it's about. It's kind of a war game. Never really have been much of a fan of war games. Um, Much more interested in building something than I am in tearing something down. Maybe it's just that simple. So, in here, in spite of my inability to make a lot of money and build a farm, I'm working on it, trying to build something in here. And it just, I don't know, at the end of the day, it leaves me with a different feeling when I do some of this sometimes as a mode of relaxation. Well, thank you all for giving this a listen and sharing some of your valuable time to listen to me drone on and on about this, that, and the other. I don't know what I'll do. I may fast forward it after this. We'll see. So we can get back to the harvest. Let me see real briefly if I can. Oh, it's hiding it from me at the moment. I was thinking maybe I have. Okay, yeah, we've been through 1 full hour of the rainfall. There's another 3 basically to go. So, when you look at it in that, if I'm doing half-hour episodes, that's basically 6 episodes in the rain. And I don't think I can pull that off. There's just not enough to do. My trees down there aren't high enough. Nobody will listen to me drone away about nonsense that whole time. So I think I'll end up fast forwarding and getting us back into the harvest. So yeah, I can take a picture here real quick of him navigating these trees. Let's see if I can. Yeah, I don't know. I gotta put something on the thumbnail. Trouble is, there's been so many episodes since I started doing this. I mean, I think this is the 91st episode now. That none of these thumbnails really stand out, other than the name Gelvin Valley and the episode number. So, what can I say? 100 episodes or bust. But thank you all again for coming along on the ride. Wish you all a wonderful day, whatever you're doing. And I will see you on the next one. Bye-bye for now.